What we're gonna do when the NWO destroys you.
Anything less would be civilized.
What is up, everybody? Welcome, friends, fellow wisdom seekers, fellow truth seekers, to the brave new world order, straight out the dungeons of podcasting. I am Brandon St. One. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining me for this episode. Today, we are going to swan dive headfirst into the abyss that is the 4 stages of ideological subversion, as outlined by former KGB operative and defector Yuri Bezmenov. And this man, Yuri Bezmenov, he did a series of interviews in the late 70s, early 1980s, outlining these stages of subversion. So we're going to go through one of these interviews. We're going to hit the key points and talk some shit. Because when I listen to these interviews and hear him outline the 4 stages of ideological subversion, I definitely take a look around what's going on, and it seems like we are right square in the middle of this process, and it's quite alarming. So I thought I would get the word out there so you all could hear for yourselves about how you bring down a country pretty much without firing any shots. I find it to be some pretty eye-opening information. I hope that you do too. So we are going to get into all of that. But real quick, if you like the Brave New World Order, please take a second to like, subscribe, share, hit the like button, leave a comment or a review. Head over to Spotify, answer the Q&A, or you could just reach out and email me at the Brave New World Order podcast at gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter /X at Brave NWO podcast. And I just wanted to tell you guys about something real quick, that the Brave New World Order podcast is now on YouTube because Google is not going to be having their podcast service or app anymore, and they're trying to migrate people over to YouTube. So against my better judgment, I decided that I was just going to import all the episodes of the podcast to YouTube, and YouTube didn't like my podcast very much, and they removed an episode, and they gave me a couple strikes. So I had to go in and make a bunch of episodes private. So if you listen on YouTube, that's awesome, but I'm not really an active YouTuber, and I'm not going to tailor my content to meet their demands. So not all the episodes of the Brave New World Order will be hitting YouTube. It's not really a priority of mine to pump out content on YouTube or even beyond there. I'll just take the whole channel down if it becomes more of a problem. I really don't care. But I do appreciate all the new listeners. I noticed that it has been getting some views, not a lot, and there's been some comments on there. And I don't really want to be participating in YouTube that much and spend time and energy. So if you listen there, awesome. Keep an eye out for the Brave New World Order podcast. But at the same time, I definitely recommend checking it out on other platforms so you can keep up with all the episodes and not miss out, because there might be some stuff worth knowing that YouTube doesn't like, and they won't even allow anybody to utter certain words or a certain combination of words. And I don't want that in my head when I'm making the podcast. I'm just going to talk about what I want to talk about, the way I want to talk about it, and I'll be thinking about the YouTube censors, and if they're not going to like it and ding it and take me down, I don't care. So I just wanted to let you all know about that. And if you're joining the Brave New World Order, you discovered it on YouTube, welcome. Thank you for joining me. And that goes for everybody else too. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for joining me, joining the Brave New World Order, joining me for this episode, and everybody that's been along with me on the journey, and all the new people ready to take this journey along with me. Welcome to the Brave New World Order podcast, and thank you all so much. Let's swan dive headfirst into the 4 stages of ideological subversion as outlined by Yuri Bezmenov. First things first, who the hell is this man, Yuri Bezmenov? He was a Russian KGB agent born in Russia in 1939. He was born and raised as a member of the Russian KGB, but in the 1970s, he was ordered to New Delhi as part of their program to subvert that place. But he fell in love with the people and the culture, and at this time, he began to resent the KGB sanctioned repression of these people of New Delhi, as well as the repression of Soviet dissidents and other intellectuals who dissented from Moscow's policies. And this is when he decided to defect to the West, which led him to Canada after he escaped the Soviet Union. And then, with an arrangement between American and Canadian security agencies, he settled in Canada up until the 1980s, where he moved to Los Angeles. Which brings us to 1984, where he gave this interview with a man named G. Edward Griffin about the 4 stages of ideological subversion. And the awesome thing about G. Edward Griffin is that in 2010, he released a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which breaks down what the Federal Reserve actually is and how in 1913, the passing of the Federal Reserve Act changed the course of history forever. So this guy's an OG. He's been dropping truth bombs since way back. He got Yuri Bezmenov. He self-financed these interviews and released them. So now that we got a little biography of Yuri Bezmenov, we know a little bit about who the interviewer G. Edward Griffin is. Let's dive into the interview. First thing, we got to know what the definition of ideological subversion is. So let's hear from Yuri Bezmenov himself.
And unlike a dictionary of English, Oxford Dictionary, subversion in Soviet terminology means always a destructive, aggressive activity aimed to destroy the country, nation, or geographical area of your enemy. So there's no romantics in there, absolutely. No blowing up bridges, no microfilms in Coca-Cola cans, nothing of that sort. No James Bond nonsense. It's most of this activity is overt, legitimate, and easily observable if you give yourself time and trouble to observe it. Now, subversion is an activity which is a two-way traffic. You cannot subvert an enemy which doesn't want to be subverted.
So that is the Marxist-Leninist Soviet definition of subversion. And Yuri Bezmenov goes into where subversion came from. And he goes back to Sun Tzu, thousands of years ago, ancient China, who wrote the book, The Art of War. And in one part of the book, he states that implementing state policy in a warlike manner is the least efficient way to do that. The highest form of warfare is to not fight at all. So Yuri Bezmenov wanted to make the point that this type of warfare, spies, cloak and dagger, the Hollywood version of the KGB is not what is really happening. It's not bridges blowing up. It's not microfilm. It's right out in the open. It's overt. And if you know the signs, and if you pay attention, then you'll know what's going on. So that's why I'm talking about this today. And that's why we're going to go through the 4 stages. Because the ultimate goal is to subvert everything of value in your enemy's country until their perception of reality is so screwed up, they don't even realize that you are their enemy. They will be so demoralized and looking for solutions, a savior. They'll look to you and your systems. You'll be the solution, even though you're really the enemy and you caused all of this. It's pretty fucked up stuff, everybody. And we might be smack in the middle of it. So now that we know what subversion is and what its ultimate goal is, let's get to stage 1 and hear what Yuri Bezmenov has to say about demoralization.
What it includes? It includes influencing, or by various methods, infiltration, propaganda methods, direct contacts, doesn't really matter. I will describe them later. Of various areas where public opinion is formulated or shaped. Religion, educational system, social life, administration, law enforcement system, military, of course, and labor and employer relations, economy. Okay? 5 areas. The first stage of subversion is the process which is called basically demoralization. It says for itself what it is. It takes from, say, 15 to 20 years to demoralize a society. Why 15 or 20 years? This is the time sufficient to educate one generation of students or children. One generation. One lifetime span of a person, a human being, which is dedicated to study, to shaping up the outlook, ideology, personality.
That's pretty interesting stuff. Demoralization takes 15 to 20 years, one generation, to shape public opinion, and they do it by attacking certain areas of society, important areas, certain values, certain truths, and they twist them all up. And if we think about what's going on right now and we go through each one of those points that he mentioned, and when we go through these, I know that it's not just in the United States. I know Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany are all going through this. The rise in equality and social justice. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I see it happening. That's why I wanted to talk about this. So we're going to go through each one of those areas that Yuri Bezmenov just mentioned: religion, education, social, administration, law enforcement, and labor, and just kind of talk about what's going on right now in the world, because it's happening right now out in the open, right before our very eyes. So let's start with religion. Lots of stuff going on with religion, right? Got the rise in atheism, the rise in scientism, trust the science, people who went against certain practices during the pandemic. A lot of times they were linked to far right, whack job religious fanatics. They definitely use religion to divide people with key issues like abortion, LGBTQ issues. I don't think you have to be religious to think things are immoral and evil. And I'm not saying those things like abortion or LGBTQ things are necessarily evil, but I just think when they're pushed at a certain degree, I think there's an agenda to fuck people's heads up, and people who may think something is not good might not align on a certain side because they're scared to be connected with an extreme alt-right QAnon religious movement that the media makes it out to be. If you say, hey, I don't really think that children have the mental capacity to make decisions about mutilating their bodies at young ages. Now, all of a sudden, you're a far right religious whack job. It's all meant to just divide and conquer, confuse, demoralize. So that's religion. There's plenty more happening with that, but we're going to keep it short. Next one is education. School systems are a mess. People are all up in arms about what's being taught to children these days in the schools. Critical race theory, which is a Marxist ideology, is being taught. People are pissed off about that. It's no secret that the universities in the United States, Canada, UK have all been captured by far left ideology. There's been some high profile professors who have stood up against this, like Jordan Peterson. It's almost cost him his job, and it seems like it almost cost him his life at one point. Seems like he had a rough go of it there for a while. And I know the Canadian government sentenced him to some re-educational training. It's hilarious. So that's what's going on with education. I mean, we could spend a day on each one of these, but I just want to get the juices flowing, get you guys thinking about this too. So the next one is social. How do you think the social lives are right now in the United States and other Western countries? I don't think it's doing that great. I think a lot of people are getting more and more lonely. I think they spend more and more time on social media. I think more and more people are getting divorced. You've also raised a whole generation of women using feminism, which is rooted in Marxism. It's created from it. Look it up. that's created a whole generation of women that think they don't need men, and it's created a whole generation of men that are all fucked up and purposeless and lonely. And then a whole group of people called incels are around walking amongst us. Scary shit. You get the rise in mental illness, mental health problems across the board. What is going on, everybody, right? So social lives are a mess. Every one of these points here that Yuri Bezmenov mentions, it seems like is definitely under attack. By whom? I don't know. We could talk about that later. All right, the next one here is administration, which is the government. Look at the governments. Like I said, the Western world, United States, Canada, UK, Germany, and many other countries. And these people, it seems like they're being put in power, in positions to push certain social justice issues, push equality, and also push immigration and use equality and pull on people's heartstrings to allow it to happen. And they'll push these LGBTQ issues, everything. Everything's equality and social justice and oppression and oppressor and reparations. And they make it very hard to talk about these issues because, like I said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Obviously, most people want their fellow neighbors and other people of this earth to do well and to not be oppressed and to not be killed and to have good things and have the basic necessities they need and to live a fulfilled life, right? So they use that and they want to put policies in place that are talking about equality and all this shit that's just not possible. You can't level the playing field across the board because not everybody is equal. Not everybody has equal ambitions and equal drive to do things and to do great things. Everybody should have the opportunities when they want to strive for great things and to be better and to lift themselves up in the world. They should have those opportunities, but to hand it to every single person equally, that's just not possible. All of this equality bullshit is just a tool of subversion, and that's the truth. So that is administration, the government, all the institutions have all these policies in place regarding equality, DEI. It's no secret. Now let's move on to law enforcement and the military. People don't even want to join the military anymore. People don't have any patriotism. And at the same time, the military has gone woke and they had no problem getting rid of people who didn't want to get the jab. Same thing in law enforcement. Lots of problems. All the stuff that happened in 2020 with George Floyd and how either one side was all cops are bad and the other side was back to blue. Once again, right down the middle. And the shitty cops that had no problem removing people from their businesses during the pandemic, shutting them down, Gestapo style. Lots of problems with law enforcement and the military. They are also, like I said, implementing woke policies across the board. And the last one he talked about is labor, which is all the same shit. Same policies that people are affected by. You have to go to work and sit for DEI training 3 times a week and learn about pronouns when you're supposed to be doing work. And they tell you how to be less white. That was from a Coca-Cola training that got leaked. They were telling people how to be less white and what the qualities of whiteness were. All this shit sounds crazy, and it's very demoralizing when you don't know what's going on. But now that we're listening to Yuri Bezmenov, all this shit is starting to make a lot more sense. We could spend a day on all these. So much to talk about. It's so very deep. But I just wanted to touch on how every one of these little points that Yuri Bezmenov says in our current society, in our current lives right now, these things are happening. So let's keep moving on to stage 2 of ideological subversion, which is destabilization. Once you have a country or your target enemy all demoralized, they think black is white and white is black, and 2 times 2 equals 5. They are so confused. That is when the destabilization process begins. Let's listen to Yuri Bezmenov in his definition of destabilization and what it entails.
The moment you bring a country to the point of almost total demoralization, when nothing works anymore, when you are not sure whether it is right or wrong, good and bad, but there's no division between evil and good, when even the leaders of church sometimes say, well, violence for the sake of justice, especially social justice, is justified in countries like Nicaragua, El Salvador, well, maybe Rhodesia, and we listen to them and say, yeah, probably it's true. Is it true? No, it is not true. Violence is not justified, especially for the sake of quote-unquote social justice introduced by Marxist-Leninists. So we reach that point. The next step is destabilization. Again, this word says for itself what it is. To destabilize all the relations, all the accepted institutions and organizations in a country of your enemy. How you do it? You don't have to send a battalion of KGB agents to blow up bridges. No. You let them do it themselves. On the stage of destabilization, we cannot come to compromise even within a family. The husband and wife couldn't figure out which is better. Husband wants his kids to eat at the table, and wife wants a child to roam around the room and drop food all over the floor. They cannot come to compromise unless they start a fight. It's impossible to reach a compromise, constructive compromise between neighbors. Radicalization of human relations. No more compromise. Fight, fight, fight. The normal, traditionally accepted relations are destabilized. The relations between teachers and students in schools and colleges. Fight. The relations in economical sphere between laborers and employers are further radicalized. No more acceptance of the legitimacy of demands of workers. We cannot solve our problems anymore. The society at large becomes more and more antagonistic between individuals, between groups of individuals, and the society at large. The media puts himself in the opposition to the society in general, at large. Separate, alienated. Okay?
All right, so that's pretty interesting stuff. A complete breakdown everywhere. Families, neighbors, workers and bosses, everywhere. You can see a little bit of that happening now for sure. So it makes me wonder if we're in the demoralization stage, or if we're in a little bit of the destabilization stage, or if we're in any stage at all and everybody is just batshit crazy and there really is no plot to subvert Western societies. I don't know. You let me know what you think. I think it's important to note how we mentioned the media and how they put themselves in direct opposition of us. And he's spot on about that like 30, 40 years ago. And he mentions these sleepers that are activated at certain times. They're in the media. They're in the movies. They're in academia. And they're put in positions of power. They're in politics. They're put in positions of power to push certain issues, equality, social justice. And he was saying this shit 40 years ago. If you're paying attention, it's clear as day, especially since the pandemic, and it woke up a lot of people. It opened a lot of eyes, and they started seeing every time there was an issue like jabs or masks, it was always the same people, the same celebrities, the same academics, the same TV doctors or television scientists that were on the news, pushing the narrative one way every single time, the same late night comedians. It's with all the current things, remember those? They're still happening. Ukraine, Navalny, all the same people speak out about it. They get on the news. Every time Russia does something or there's some kind of high profile event like a mass shooting and they want to confiscate guns, it's always the same politicians, same celebrities, like I said. It all makes sense when you listen to what this man has to say. Let's listen to a little more of it.
They spring to action. The sleepers go up. They slept for 15 to 20 years. Now they become leaders of groups, preachers, I don't know, public figures, prominently they actively include themselves in a political process. All of a sudden we see a homosexual. 15 years ago he did his dirty job and nobody cared. Now he makes it a political issue. He demands recognition, respect, human rights, and he rallies a large group of people. And there are violent clashes between him and police, his group and ordinary people, no matter what. It's black against white, yellows against green, doesn't matter where his division line goes. As long as this group come into antagonistic clash, sometimes militantly, sometimes with firearms, that is destabilization process. The sleepers, many of whom are simply KGB agents, become leaders of the process of destabilization. Doesn't mean that Comrade Andropov sends Comrade Ivanov to the United States. The person who takes care is already here. He is a respected citizen of the United States. Sometimes he gets money from various foundations for his legitimate struggle for, I don't know, human rights, women's rights, kid lib, prison lib, whatever. There are sympathetic Americans who donate their money to him.
See what I mean? All this stuff seems to be playing out just like Yuri Bezmenov laid it out so many years ago. I'm not saying it's the Russians, the KGB who's doing it, but they're using this playbook. They're using Marxist, Leninist ideology, and it seems like we're smack in the middle of it for sure. I'd love to know what you all think about this. Definitely reach out. I find this all to be so very fascinating. Let's keep moving on. That was stage number 2, destabilization. We're going to move on to stage 3, which is crisis.
Stabilization process usually leads directly to the process of crisis. The process starts when the legitimate bodies of power, the social structure collapse. It cannot function anymore. So instead, we have artificial body injected into society, such as non-elected committees, social workers who are not elected by people, media who are self-appointed rulers of your opinion, some strange groups which claim that they know how to lead society forward. They don't usually. All they care is how to collect donations and sell their own concocted ideology, mixture of religion and ideology. Here, we have all this artificial body claiming power. If the power is denied to them, they take it by force.
Once again, just take a look around at our current situation worldwide. Look at the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, how much power they had, how much power they still have, and all their issues push the same bullshit about the greater good of mankind and equality and equity, and none of these motherfuckers are elected at all, and they have a lot of power. There's another pandemic or another worldwide emergency. Who knows how much power they will have? Look at us here and how much power the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the FDA has. Even the FBI, the CIA, all unelected people that can make decisions that can greatly impact the lives of Americans. So I think Yuri Bezmenov was making a lot of sense way back in the 1980s. Let's take a listen to some more of what he had to say, and I want you to pay special close attention to this next segment. Check it out.
Crisis is when society cannot function anymore productively. It collapses, obviously. That's the word for crisis. So therefore, the population at large is looking for a savior. The religious groups are expecting a messiah to come. The workers say, we have family to feed. Let's have a strong government, maybe socialist government, centralized. When somebody put the employers on their place and Let us work. We are sick and tired of going to strike and missing overtime and all that stuff. We need some strong man, strong government, a leader, a savior is needed. Population is sick and tired already. And here we are. We have a savior. Either a foreign nation comes in, or the local group of leftists, Marxists, no matter what they call themselves, Sandinista, a reverend or some sort, Bishop Muzureva, like in Zimbabwe, doesn't matter. A savior comes and says, I will lead you.
All right, so I think that's interesting because I don't know if we have been completely destabilized. We are still functioning, but there are a lot of people at this very moment looking for a savior, looking for somebody to come in and change all this because it's getting so crazy. And for a lot of people, Donald Trump is that guy. And I think it's interesting because I talked about this many times before, that I wonder if that's being done on purpose. Because he definitely seems like the alternative to all the crazy far left shit that's going on. But what if that's the trick? Who knows? I guess it's just best to be careful and not put your faith in any of these men. Because unfortunately, in reality, nobody is coming to save you. But let's keep moving on. In this next segment here, this is where Yuri Bezmenov explains what happens at this stage of destabilization. You have two alternatives. We'll listen to what those are. And then he gets into the final stage of ideological subversion, which is normalization.
So we have two alternatives here, civil war and invasion. Civil war, we know what it is. Lebanon is the best example. The civil war, which was artificially implanted in Lebanon by injection of force of PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. Invasion we had in many other countries like Afghanistan, name any East European country, it was invaded by the Soviet army. But the result is the same. The next stage is normalization. Normalization is a very ironic word, of course. It is borrowed from 1968 situation in Czechoslovakia, when the Soviet propaganda and after them New York Times declared the country is normalized. The tanks moved into Prague, so there's no more Prague Spring, there's no more violence. Normalization. At that stage, the self-appointed rulers of the society don't need any revolution anymore. They don't need any radicalism anymore. So this is the reverse from destabilization. Basically, it is stabilizing the country by force. So all the sleepers and activists and social workers and liberals and homosexuals and professors and Marxists and Leninists are being eliminated physically sometimes. They've done their job already. Okay? They are not needed anymore. The new rulers need stability to exploit the nation, to exploit the country, to take advantages of the victory. Okay? So no more revolutionaries, please. And that's exactly what happens in a number of countries. You remember Bangladesh? This is the crisis in which I was instrumental. First they had Mujibur Rahman. In 1971, he was the leader of People's Party, Awami League, with mustache like Stalin. He was in Russia many times. In 5 years, he was shot by his former colleagues, Marxists. He fulfilled his function. In Afghanistan, it happened 3 times. First there was Taraki, then there was Amin, now there's Babrak Karmal. They killed each other successively, one after another. The moment he fulfills his duty, the first one demoralized country, the second destabilized, the third one brought it to crisis. Goodbye, comrades. Babrak Karmal comes from Moscow and put into the seat of power. Same thing happened in Grenada recently. Maurice Bishop, Marxist, was killed by Austin, what's his name, General something, who was also a Marxist. Right? So no more revolutions, please. Normalization now. From now on, no more strikes, no more homosexuals, no more women lib, no more kid lib, no more lib, period. Good, solid, democratic, proletarian freedom.
So there you have it. Once everything is completely destabilized, you either get civil war or you get invasion. But whichever one happens, the end result is the same, and that is stage 4, the final stage of ideological subversion, and that is normalization. And like Yuri Bezmenov says, it's a very ironic term because nothing is normal about it. They take control, and this is when they start cleaning house. Like Yuri says, they get rid of the sleepers by force, physically, probably kill them all the useful idiots in the media, all the people in academia that helped them get to where they wanted to get, that helped push the agenda. Those are the people up against the wall first, they say. It's very interesting stuff, especially with all this talk of civil war brewing in the United States. It's probably a more likely scenario than invasion, but at the same time, they are letting a lot of people in through the southern border, almost like an invasion. Maybe they'll try to hit us with both a civil war invasion double feature. I don't know. And I don't know what we can do about this shit either, because once it happens, and once we are normalized, quote unquote, after crisis, after destabilization, after demoralization, the only way out of that situation, unfortunately, according to Yuri Bezmenov, is military force. So just like the United States, for example, has done in the past, they've gone into a communist country and they've gotten rid of the leadership and put new leadership in place, even though they may have had a huge role in putting that government in place to begin with. He says the only way out of it is for another country to come in and liberate those people. And that has its own consequences too. So it's best to not let this happen at all. Yuri Bezmenov has some ideas about how we can prevent this. So let's take a listen.
Restriction of some liberties for small groups which are self-declared enemies of the society. As simple as that. Oh no, the media and liberals will tell you this is against the American Constitution. How can we, by force, deny the civil rights to criminals, for example? It's not good. Okay? So we allow them to. Okay, if you allow the criminals to have civil rights, go on and bring the country to the crisis. This is a bloodless way to do. Curb the rights. I mean, not to put them in prison. No, I'm not talking about putting all the gays from San Francisco in the concentration camp. Do not allow them to take political force. Do not elect them to the seats of power, whether it is municipality level, state level, or federal level. It has to be beaten in the heads of American voters that a person like that in the seats of power is an enemy. Do not be afraid of this word. It is an enemy. If he is not an enemy here, he will be here. Later on, he will be shot, of course. But at this point, he is an enemy. Okay? You are doing great service by denying him a right to capitalize on his own crazy ideas and become a powerful man, a man who uses the seat of power. Restriction of certain freedoms and permissiveness at that point would prevent sliding into crisis and probably will return the process of destabilization. To curb unlimited power, monopolistic power of trade unions, here, at that point, would save economy from collapsing. To introduce a law to stop private companies of raping public opinion's mind in the direction of consumerism. No company must have a right to force you into buying more unless you want it. There must be a law. You want to advertise your car? Okay. But not a single mentioning of buying it now and saving money. It must be against the law to force people to consume more. Self-restraint. Previously, before this process started, the self-restraint was a business of church, religion. Because our preachers, the fathers of church, would tell us, material values are good, but it's not the prime function of human being. Because you have to live with something. Obviously, the design for our life is not to consume more deodorants. There must be something greater. If such a complicated instrument as human body was created, obviously there must be some higher purpose for that. And it's very easy to avoid destabilization by denying the greedy companies one little freedom, one little liberty, forcing you into turning yourself into processors of unwanted products and goods. They turn you into machines, like the worm who there's inlet and outlet. So, and how long an average appliance lasts these days? Less than a year. Why? Where's workmanship? Oh, we want you to buy more. Okay. Destabilization process could be easily overcome if, as I say, the society, by its own will or after persuasion by the leaders, will come to the idea of self-restraint. It's so hard, we want to consume more, but you have to. Unless you will come to this stage, when, as we say in Russia, if Sahara Desert ever becomes a communist state, there will be shortage of sand. You have to curb your expectations at this point before it's too late. But no, we don't want to do it. See? So, the process of demoralization could be stopped right here, both as an expert and as an import. And that takes one step, one very important thing to do. You don't have to expel all the KGB agents from Washington, D.C. The most difficult and at the same time the simplest answer to the subversion is to start it here and even before, by bringing back the society to religion, something that you cannot touch and eat and put on yourself, but something that rules society and makes it move and preserve it. The ideas are moving society and keeping mankind as society of human beings, intelligent, moral agents of God. The facts, the truth, the exact knowledge may not. All the sophisticated technology and computers will not prevent society from disintegrating and eventually dying out. Have you ever met a person who would sacrifice his life, freedom, for the truth like that? This is truth. I never met a person who said, this is truth and I'm ready to shoot me. To defend the truth. Right? But millions sacrifice their life, freedom, comfort, everything for things like God, like Jesus Christ. It's an honor. Some martyrs in the Soviet concentration camp died. And they died in peace, unlike those who shouted, "Long live Stalin," knowing perfectly well that he may not live long. Something which is not material moves society and helps it to survive. And the other way around, the moment we turn into 2 by 2 is 4 and make it a guiding principle of our life, our existence, we die. Even though this is true, and this we cannot prove. We only can feel and have faith in it. So the answer to ideological subversion, strangely enough, is very simple. You don't have to shoot people, you don't have to aim missiles and Pershings and cruise missiles at Andropov's headquarters. You simply have to have faith and prevent subversion. In other words, not to be a victim of subversion. Don't try to be a person who in judo is trying to smash your enemy and being caught by your hand. Don't strike like that. Strike with the power of your spirit and moral superiority. If you don't have that power, it's high time to develop it. And that's the only answer.
So that's pretty deep, everybody. I think so. And I think he's on to something. And I think it's tough, though, at the same time realizing, like I mentioned earlier, that a lot of religious institutions are corrupt. And it seems like it's planned out that way to probably divide and push people further away from God. But I think there is something to finding a relationship with God, a personal one, something spiritual, something other than chasing things in this material world. The more I think about it, I really do think that it's a safeguard to falling into the traps of this world. If you're not looking for a savior, like Yuri mentioned, if you're not chasing all these material things, you're not looking for governments to provide you with rights because they don't. You already have those rights. God provided those rights to you when you were created and you were born free. Government doesn't grant that for you. So, whatever path it is, whatever spiritual journey one might find themselves on, I think it's better than chasing materialistic things and never finding happiness within yourself. So I think Yuri Bezmenov is onto something for sure. I hope that you all enjoyed going through the 4 stages of ideological subversion as laid out by the man himself, Yuri Bezmenov, in 1983, so many years ago, and it seems like it's all laid out and happening right before our very eyes. I would love to know what you all think about this. If you think Yuri Bezmenov is onto something, what you think about the 4 stages of ideological subversion. Leave a review, leave a comment, smash the like button, leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast. Head over to Spotify. You can answer the Q&A or participate in polls. And also check out the bravenewworldorder.com. You can comment over there. You can listen. You can subscribe to the email list. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart for coming along with me on this journey. Everybody that helps the show out. If you want to help out the show, the best thing to do is definitely leave a review, like the episode, share this with your friends, your family, strangers, anybody that will listen to you. But if you want to help out and make a small donation, any little bit helps. You can. There are a couple links in the show notes and on the website. Thank you all once again. You'll be hearing from me very soon. In the meantime, stay positive. Think for yourself. Question everything. Much love, everybody. Peace out.